there's a player that could live up to it, it's definitely Fury.
Well, let's get into the battleground pool between these two teams, but pressure is on the line on every single person for Gale Force Esports, and that has been a sore point for them before. As we see Braxis Holdout be the ban for Tempo Storm, Gale Force bans Infernal Shrines. Tempo picks Dragonshire. This is it's a favored pick for Tempo Storm to start things off with. But as I was saying before, pressure for Gale Force Esports. This is a defining moment for this team. It's been a problem for them shot calling wise. They've been able to overcome so much together as a unit, as a family, to get to here where they have to get this win. But they have to keep up every single thing that they've had going for them so far, because Tempo Storm is not an easy opponent to be your last opponent that you have to win versus.
I want to hit you with this one, Gilly. Dragonshire, 5-0 for Tempo Storm. Average match time, 16 minutes, 54 seconds. And that might not stand out to a lot of people. But when you look at average match time in the competitive scene, historically, it falls somewhere between the 18 to 18.5 minute range on all maps. And when you can start getting down to that 17 minute or less, it means that you're not just winning those battlegrounds, it means that you're dominating those battlegrounds. On this battleground alone, in those 5 victories, 0 losses, they have a 2.85 KD, excuse me. Which, of course, as you alluded to, one of the most aggressive teams. They're sitting at the top of North America at 1.7. This is by far their best battleground.
Yeah, it's a landslide, that 1.7. The next highest is Gale Force at 1.21. That puts Tempo Storm at 4th in the world, behind Team Dignitas, Tempest, and Ballistics. And they have one of the lower ends of teammates per kill, so they're just straight up everyone firing on all cylinders, everyone playing to their maximum potential. There are some things to work out, as Glaurung said. There have been places where individuals have been picked. That has to be cleaned up before they make it to Europe and before they take on European teams.
I think this is definitely a good part for them to clean that up, but one thing that always tends to come out here is the potential Malthael factor, the potential Kerrigan factor. Malthael being banned out by Tempo Storm. We've seen a lot of Ragnaros play, but the Kerrigan play in particular has been a high priority for both these teams on Dragonshire. We've seen these very aggressive compositions, and I think that we could potentially see that. Tempo Storm likes to invade early. They like to take control of this game early, which leads to their shorter game time. So I think that Kerrigan maybe shows up later in the draft, not that early, but I fully expect them to have some type of aggressive nature in the draft.
For Gale Force on Dragon, generally it's been Greymane early, and Greymane still was a high priority, high value target for a lot of the teams in the last series. Not the case in Europe though, so now we're gonna start to see where does Malthael fall on a regional meta basis. Obviously still very high. He's first ban worthy for Tempo Storm. Where does Greymane fall? Still yet to be seen. Is he within those top few picks? Because he was barely in drafts in Europe earlier today. We'll see if Gale Force wants to get him though. Gale Force does have a high priority on that hero and did coming into at least this weekend.
They have 12 games on it, 7 for Udall, 5 for Biggie. And it's been a pretty successful hero for them, given that globally Greymane sits right around 43, 44, inching up to 45%. This is minor rework, obviously, but they have a very high win percentage with him so far. And Udall in particular stood out to me, Gilly. I was really diving into this because it's kind of like Udall's kind of played that secondary damage dealer role. But when it comes to this team, he averages those 2.6 kills per game. And when you look at the fact that he has multiple games on Greymane and Kerrigan, total of 11, he's only averaging 1.3 deaths a game. For somebody that plays the aggressive nature, aggressive style heroes that you see there, that's actually a really low number for a person that plays those. So Michael Udall has actually been pretty standout when it comes to securing kills as well as staying alive.
Not just his Greymane, but looking at his Jaina, which is why I'm really happy to see that Jaina gets prioritized here. He is sitting at 4.8 kills per game across those 4 games with Jaina and less than 1 death. We have seen some phenomenal Jaina play from Michael Udall, and what's interesting is this isn't really a role that we're used to seeing Michael Udall on. It's been more of the aggressive, even melee heavy, and then sometimes a double supporting, but this is sort of a new territory to have for Michael Udall, and he has been playing exceptionally well on that, and especially with his Jaina.
That is a great point. I noted all that with Udall. On those heroes, it's fun to watch because he definitely makes plays for his team. So we enter the second ban phase here. We know Biggie can play the Genji and will be more than willing to play the Genji. Sometimes you'll see the Genji kind of fit the Tracer style with a Malfurion, is that you're still able to get the healing so long as you have a regrowth on you, hit the Moonfire. You can still supply the heals to people that aren't necessarily in range for heals, but just taking Genji out of the equation altogether, Tempo Storm going to take that off.
With Ethereal, I'm wondering if Gale Force, this is where we see a possible Greymane ban. If the Kerrigan is a factor, a concern now, from Tempo Storm playing her quite a lot on Dragonshire and having success. Not just Tempo, we saw it from Simplicity too. The amount of aggression, the sheer aggression that you get from those camp invades. Any other thoughts as to what that ban might be for Gale Force? Maybe a solo laner?
Yeah, these solo laners there, I think Tassadar, maybe in particular because Spans had such a high probability of playing that hero. He fits to that solo laner, so you can kind of flex around that. If they go a little bit more aggressive, I think the Greymane definitely opens that up. But the hero pools of Tempo Storm is probably the hardest one to prepare for. Fan has played 11 heroes himself, and so I think that makes it difficult.
Yes.
Tracer is one of those heroes that, pairing with Malfurion, nobody wants to deal with.
Of course, of course. How could we forget? How could I forget? As Gale Force Esports themselves have been willing to bust out a Malfurion Tracer, and Big E is no slouch, but it leaves open the Kerrigan and the Uther. Double support.
Kerrigan factor fully in place there. Instead of just loading up on melee, you just load up on support.
Yeah.
We'll see. The ultimate enabler is Uther there with the Kerrigan. Make sure Kerrigan can get in and out, stay alive as needed. Uther obviously does well against Jaina as well. Malfurion struggles against burst damage, and Jaina on the other side definitely is high burst, probably some of the highest bursts in the entire game. So keeping that on your side, good for Tempo Storm. It does give them the possibility to dive in and potentially early invade, but it doesn't necessarily have the same kill potential, the same threat. So I think I really want to see where we end up with their last pick and how their laning phase is going to go. Because they still need somebody in the top lane unless they go a 2-1-2 or a 2-3 split.
Yeah, I was wondering how the laning phase was going to be set up as well for Tempo. Sort of wondering about the idea of a Medivh for Gale Force. And Lucio. So we get Akaface's best, his favorite, his most played, and we get Big E's Medivh as a way of trying to slow out the pressure of Tempo Storm. We've seen teams try to respond to this kind of play from Tempo Storm in two different ways, and it seems like Gale Force is going to start with trying to see if they can counter it.
I like it. It's definitely one way to deal with a lot of that heavy front-loaded damage, is to make sure that Medivh, I mean, once Kerrigan's popped that combo, I mean, yeah, you can get it with the momentum at level 7, getting that cooldown reduction, but Medivh, if you can get through the initial burst, it's definitely very difficult to kind of reset that. So they have the potential there. The one thing that does concern me a little bit is that they are, in fact, a double mage style team when you have Medivh. So it's all in or nothing on their side as well. Against a Dragon Knight, it's a little bit easier to kind of get that Q reset for Medivh, but you're still lacking that auto attack damage. Still gonna be okay, but
Dahaka as that solo laner for the top. It's a pretty interesting iteration on a draft style that we have come to know Tempo Storm for. But there's still all of the possibilities of being able to get some early picks on people. Before Jaina builds up and she has improved Ice Block, before ETC can build up and get some of his tankier talents, or before he finishes the Prog Rock to have some extra healing, and before Lucio, of course, starts to build up into having more. But having the Medivh should be a welcome help with that for Gale Force Esports.
The Medivh is definitely going to help, but again, if you give up those camps, you give up that small amount of structure lead, you give up that small amount of control, and that's something that the Dahaka kind of brings to the table, is that if you have that dominant solo laner, you know, Blaze is going to have decent clear, but it's a matter of can he do much after Dahaka brush stalkers out to potentially invade an early siege camp, which is likely what Tempo Storm will do in the first few minutes of the game.
Well, let's get into it. Game 1 on Dragonshire between Tempo Storm and Gale Force Esports. Tempo Storm may have already qualified, but Gale Force Esports, they need this win. They need every win in this series to stay in the running.
And they will be going up against Tempo Storm, our #1 team here in North America, as it will be them on the left in blue, with Glaurung on Dahaka, Fan on Malfurion, Cattle on Tyrael, Psalm on the Kerrigan, and June on Uther.
In the red, Gale Force Esports, big impact. He'll be playing that Medivh. Michael Udall, he's on his Jaina. Beacon will be playing the Blaze, Fury on his ETC, and Akaface playing Lucio.
Jaina, it seems like maybe contemplating the poke build, getting the extra range. They're going to go into the burst damage. Maybe there was some contemplation with that dive style. Play super safe. The B-Kid getting caught out here.
Has the force of will. Nice combo after the fact. It's going to be a blizzard and a short portal down, but it's enough. It'll do. This B-Kid gets out alive.
That B-Kid gets out alive, but so did Cattle there. Double support coming into play, obviously helping out, but with Fan moving over to Malfurion, this is his second Malfurion game. You can see he's not the traditional support, going Celestial alignment at level 1, getting that extra auto attack damage after he hits, also getting that extra reveal. So
yeah, I remember I looked at his stats after that one Malfurion game. It was something like 3 kills in that game alone.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, his Malfurion stats were insane, but I guess that's what happens when you put a player like Fan on Malfurion. He's still going to find ways to make plays, even from the supporting position.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Fan stats going into our next game, because he is standout for sure.
He's standout, yeah, in NA.
Here's the early invade. As soon as the 1 minute mark hit, they cleaned up the camp. And we've got Gale Force coming in from a flank position here.
Those roots were great. Now Fury's stuck in between everybody else. This is the force of will as well as the power slide to get back. But that is giving up the camp as Tempo Storm brings everyone in with that Dahaka, as they're wont to do with that Dahaka, as he'll head straight back up. Tempo Storm have been in charge even as early as just having that combo, forcing back Gale Force, and then getting the win in that mid lane so that they could push that wave out and get the wave clear advantage between the mid and the bottom. But it's the respect that Gale Force is giving to them with that Kerrigan and the potential combos, the follow-ups too, that really is allowing Tempo Storm to dominate between this rotation.
I just, you could see that coming a mile away. The invade, bring Dahaka in. Blaze ended up going mid. And by the time that Dahaka got back top, there were still 4 out of the 7 minions there, so they didn't lose much in the way of experience. And, it's one of those things, although June getting caught out here, the boop out of the blizzard, though.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Now Jaina's in danger, gets the force of will, but Roots catch just in the nick of time as Kerrigan will be able to take her out. Jaina falls. Now the rest of Gale Force Esports retreating for their lives as they get back. First blood for Tempo Storm.
First blood, and all this control so far has actually given Tempo Storm about a half-level lead. Gale Force has struggled to maintain, keeping up with the waves. Akapace, he's going to get caught. Force of Will going to be a tiny bit late, but the shield, or excuse me, the portal over, going to keep Akapace alive.
Gale Force Esports are using this Medivh really well to keep them alive when Tempo Storm attacks. But at some point, they're going to have to start trying to bring aggression of their own. Where do you see that coming in for Gale Force Esports?
That extra root size, he gets just behind the wall, but Malfurion picks up the extra root. You get the bigger size and you get more duration, so locking out Udall there from getting back in ended up eating quite a bit of damage, and that's 2 turrets down on Gale Force's bottom wall.
Yeah, hopefully Gale Force can stabilize, start using this Medivh more aggressively, try to control the rotations between mid-bot using the portals, because as it is right now, all they've been able to do is the stock comes in. Fury does not want to be around here, hanging out, caught by the drag as Glaurung is going to pull him further away from being able to stop the Dragon Knight, which is grabbed 3 minutes 45 seconds into this game by Tempo Storm.
When I threw the statistic out in terms of average game time, Tempo Storm has very much accelerated the pace here in the early game, getting multiple structures down on the fort walls, picking up the early DK. This is everything that we know them to do. That's why double mage style composition, it's so hit or miss, right? You got to hit everything to have that early game impact before you start getting that master's touch in, before you start getting that bonus damage from Jaina, where you get the big impact plays. So if you get too far behind, the catch-up is obviously that much more difficult.
Yeah, I'm a little bit scared about Master's Touch too. We've seen some teams deviate away, but in this instance, Big E's still going to be trying to stack that up. There is the Dragon Knight going down. It did some fort damage, but Gale Force kept from losing the fort there. But the big deal is that Tempo Storm maintains that near-level lead, and if they continue that out, they're going to have a big boost once they get to heroic abilities.
B-Kid eating a bit of damage. Tongue just missing there by Glaurung. We're also seeing a little bit of a change up. We're seeing Wild Regrowth picked up here. Obviously, you've got the Cleanse, the Hand of Protection there on the side of Uther. That's going to create a different dynamic. Solomon team, though, they are very aggressive in here, and they're getting damage in. Big Impact just barely makes that out alive. Solomon's very low, but the shielding keeps him alive.
Had to use his own force of will, did Biggie, to keep himself alive, and that was absolutely necessary, as he only has a few Masters touch stacks. He has a ways to go from that. But Tempo Storm, they keep their aggression going, and it is like clockwork for this team. They take the Giants aggressively. That keeps Gale Force Esports dealing with that. They're going to head up and get their bruisers. That helps up with their top lane. But on the topic of the top lane, this might be a place for Gale Force Esports to get back in this game, as they have found one Glaurung.
They found the Glaurung. They just don't have enough damage yet. Don't have enough globes to get that extra 10%, which might have been enough there, sitting on 11 out of 20. But instead, a failed gank attempt. They'll have to rotate back down, try and get some XP here. They do find themselves down in experience, though, Gilly. They got to come back up. Looks like they're going to focus on getting a camp of their own to try and get some control, while they know that they'll inevitably give up 10 here soon.
If they get this camp and try to push along with it, hold on to the top lane while they get 10, Tempo Storm might just simply push that bottom fort down, getting the Giants already, then heading down to the Bruisers, having a massive push there, take that fort, get heroic abilities, maybe get the Dragon Knight from that, but if not, just siege down the fort and start setting yourself up really nicely. But it looks like Gale Force doesn't want to go down or go up and push along with their Bruisers. Instead, they're going to just head down at least a little bit, or it seemed that way. They're going to see if they can get a gank here in the mid, make sure that they're stopping a Dragon Knight, just clear out wherever they can for heroic abilities.
This is the thing that I love about Tempo Storm, Gilly, is that, as you've been pointing out, their calls aren't just the right calls. They are timely. They are precise. They are everything that you want from a team to make sure that the calls are quick. They're keeping Gale Force on their heels, keeping them, chasing them the entire time. And so far, it's working out for them.
Oh, I love watching a Medivh player play versus another Medivh player. The back and forth of Psalm, very patient, seeing if he could bait out the Force of Will, collapsing with the combo. But Big Impact has the Force of Will for that, is able to avoid the stun, gets back through the portal. But still, even with that, Gale Force Esports has been just constantly on the run from Tempo Storm. Everything is just defending, defending, defending. They have heroics now. Maybe this is the point where we'll see them start to strike. You see Fury looking at the flank.
Gilly, that big health bar, we're going to have to talk about that on the mage there, giving that spell armor. You can see the green bar there. Fan keeping that healed up. They use the Tyrael shields and the heals from that to keep that going as long as they can. This is not new to Tempo Storm. They use Malfurion and they use Tyrael. They will just hard push in under those camps. They get all the way through the fort and the keep wall. That's how impactful that combination is. The Tyrael shields, the healing from Malfurion. Always looking to hit that W onto a hero to make sure and proc that extra heal for the camps. It's insane.
Got them a lot more. They got a lot out of that. Thanks to the idea of that double mage. There's a cleanse from June. Keeps Fan from getting caught from Fury. Both of these shrines being held as Tempo Storm ready to get back into the battle. Boop from Makaface. The Water Elemental comes out. Gale Force are willing to fight this.
They're willing to fight it. Cattle needs a bit of damage. He's going to Eldritch Ruins out to safety. Both shrines still there. Dahaka, we can see him actually lurking up in the top. Udall has spotted him out, but he's got to make sure he doesn't get grabbed.
Yeah, Glaurung was waiting to see if Gale Force just went too far forward. He could just steal the Dragon Knight. Not finding that, though. Instead, Tempo Storm will just strike. They'll pounce. Twilight Dream hits a bunch. They've got the drag. They've got the kill on ETC.
They've got it. That's all that they'll need, is they'll be able to rotate out, probably get themselves a second DK here. Biggie! That's a reset on Master's Touch.
That's rough. That is rough. Gale Force losing those two. Now, as Glaurung goes down, takes bottom, we'll put a Malfurion in the Dragon Knight, and Tempo Storm get their second DK. Along with the Giants, as you said, more precise timings.
Everything. I mean, this is going to be a tough defense on the keep. The keep is likely to fall here. There's no keep wall. You have Siege Giants, which will continue to be healed and shielded. A DK, well, it can't be healed because at least not in the traditional way, because Malfurion's in there. But the keep, very much under assault.
With the Dragon Knight being there, Gale Force are going to see if they can engage with the portals on the back side of this. Try to catch anybody out if possible. Maybe even just force the Sanctification, but Psalm going in with the combo on the isolation. Glaurung catches the drag still, and Michael Udall just cannot escape the grasp of Tempo Storm. But Gale Force, they take down Psalm, and they at least trade out 1-for-1.
They trade out, and the DK is just staying on this keep, trying to take it down. It's such a major advantage in this game. Gets the last hit in. Fury trying to see if he can punish them for staying too long. Dahaka getting dove upon. The shields, everything that they can to try and get out is Tempo Storm.
Have the moving speed of Cattle there, as well as Glaurung if he can get into the bushes. They'll land a drag. from Fury, who's found himself a Malfurion. With the ice block, though, Fan is A-okay, and Gale Force will have to be content with the solo kill on Kerrigan. But at least they're still in this. They lost the keep, though. That's going to be problematic for them for future Dragon Knights.
Especially the fact that they don't have the global. They don't have that advantage. That lies on the side of Tempo Storm with Dahaka. That will be a tough defense as the game goes on. Trying to find their way back as Gale Force. They're going to see if they can force out some rotations, force out something with some camps. That bottom camp picked up by Tempo Storm at Siege Giant. It'll take a while to get to the keep. So Gale Force has a small window of opportunity.
Use the portal play, potentially, as Medivh has seen this. But Caterpillar is out in the bushes. That might be far safer for Gale Force to try to catch. Unfortunately for them, Caterpillar out of all the jukes in the world with the Eldruin. He's just fine to get back behind the gate. That was enough time for Tempo Storm to get those bruisers. Now Gale Force Esports has to lick their wounds, clean up their base.
Got to clean it up. Isolation was actually used there. Udall very far forward as we see the Maelstrom is out. That's going to be Udall getting instantly blown up. And now Tempo Storm looking to put their pedal to the metal as they go in. They're trying to dive and get more. Akaface is trying to get his team away. Biggie lives, but Fury and B-Kid caught on the wrong side of the battlefield here.
Fury was making some pretty good jukes between the bunker that B-Kid dropped down as well as the portals. But B-Kid not in range for the safety portal. That was used by Biggie to save Fury. Glowering will chase him down slowly for a kill. That's quite a staggered death for Gale Force Esports in this mid-game. Tempo Storm 6 kills to 1 as they're looking at 16 and another Dragon Knight along with it.
Boy, they've tried to get this kill onto Cattle so many times. They just don't have the tools, Gilly. You have one stun, and that is the power side. You don't get the roots from Jaina until 16. There's no other way for you to lock him down, and the attempts are all for naught every single time.
It is unfortunate for Gale Force Esports. They have had a heck of a time trying to get any kills. They got the one Psalm kill, as we saw in the bottom lane chaos, but it was well worth the effort for Tempo Storm, well worth the loss that they got that earlier keep. They're playing patiently, checking out the Giants, waiting for that 16. Dahaka shows top. Gale Force see that. They're okay with getting a little bit of aggression here. But remember, Dahaka can always stalk in. Michael Udall using the water elemental.
Yeah, Dahaka's coming in on the backside. We see Fury and team, they're holding on the point, but Psalm's looking to aggress further, and Tempo Storm coming in forward, but Udall with the flank through the portal, Gilly.
Oh, that gigantic combo is a double kill quickly as with that, Tempo Storm get the 2 kills. B-Kid and Michael Udall on one side of the fight. We see Biggie being chased down on the other. Twilight Dream is glowering, using that movement speed. Gets for the chase, trying to catch that Michael Udall. As he ice blocks, avoids the drag. He's going to chase, he's going to give chase to Glowering for a long time. But as you look at the core, it doesn't even matter. Tempo Storm are quickly moving on to that for Gale Force.
Yeah, you know, I mean, if you get it, it's just for fun. But this is it. I mean, we're looking at 13.5 minutes roughly for Tempo Storm. 10-1. And all this lines up to what we know from Tempo Storm on Dragonshire. 6-0, Gilly. And that average game time, well, we got a mosh pit. This will delay the inevitable for a second. But the way that Tempo Storm plays this is so unique. The style in which they play. The Tyrael Malfurion push with these camps, it's got to feel bad. They do this every single game. Tyrael Malfurion, let's shield everything, walk right in, dare you to dive under us because we have spell armor. Every game. Every game.
The drafting was just so good for Tempo Storm that they had that Tyrael Malfurion. They could kind of go anywhere with that, and they had that core combo that you said. And then because of the Malfurion, Gale Force felt like they could not deal with the Tracer. They didn't want to take the Tracer away because the Malfurion was already there for Tempo Storm, so they didn't have that big tool to go with her. They banned the Tracer, but it still leaves open the Kerrigan. You just go into the double supporting, and Tempo can run it because they're Tempo Storm, and they can run pretty much everything and strategy-wise make it work. Good drafting for Tempo Storm, utilizing their flexibility, switching over to the double support, still being able to make their double melee assassin or super melee stylings work for them.
Everything that they do is clockwork. I mean, their draft specifically said, all right, we're going to invade, which is what they always do. As soon as a minute hit, they literally cleared the bottom wave, and then walk directly over the siege camp. No hesitation, because the style of Jaina Medivh's not that much of a threat early game, so they just walk right in and they take it. And they do that by moving to Haka. Blaze ended up rotating down to the middle lane instead of staying in the top lane. So you didn't, instead of denying experience by clearing that wave, you all of a sudden just keep it mostly neutral and in favor of Tempo Storm, and they controlled a lot of that base. So it's for teams to give that up so freely, I think they need to dig a little bit deeper. It's not easy, right, to deal with what Tempo Storm does, but you can see the exact way that they function. It's just they're always going to be 1-2 steps ahead, and that's kind of, it's not just the first step. It's every step that they took after, which was what's so good. When they get the camps, they rotate the camps, they move down, they push directly, and everything that they did was literally clockwork of how Tempo functions on that map.
Yeah, and for Gale Force, it did feel like the early stages of the game were pretty discombobulated, trying to figure out what the heck to do with that Tempo Storm style. And it's not on Gale Force, really. It is maybe that they could have studied and seen how Tempo plays that, but everyone has been struggling to try to figure out how the heck to make that not a thing, especially on Dragonshire. So for them, they lose that first game, but they still have more opportunities. We're going to